Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are watching us today, you are welcome to the 2020 International ACAC Virtual Conference. You are welcome in particular to our panel discussion, which is a natural dialogue and conversation in the format of corona-free virtual round table. It is a great pleasure to have you all with us, and we hope that you and your loved ones are healthy in these challenging times. Of course, we do not want to let this go without thanking all the committee members of the International ACAC. Many thanks to Margaret and her team for giving us this opportunity to virtually engage in this panel with our colleagues from around the world. The panel of this session holds the title, New Practices for High School Counselors and University Admission Representatives. What have we learned from the current challenging times? My name is Youssef, International Admissions Counselor at Stony Brook University. I have the pleasure today to be the moderator of this panel discussion with great 6 other panelists. The panel wouldn't have been existed or wouldn't have without the input of our amazing 6 panelists today. I'm going to stop here and hand it over to our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Karen Bauer. I'm the Regional Education Advising Coordinator for Education USA based in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. I work out of the US Consulate General and cover the countries in the Gulf states as well as South and Central Asia. It's a pleasure to be here and I look forward to sharing about the Education USA Network and how we have helped high school counselors and students during the time of COVID. If you don't know about Education USA, we are a State Department network that helps international students learn about opportunities to study in the United States and support our higher ed community.
Phil?
Phil Abraham. I'm a high school counselor at the American Community School of Abu Dhabi.
Yes, Sonia?
Hi everyone, and I am Sonia and I work as a head of career guidance department at one of the international schools in Mumbai. Happy to be sharing the platform with the panelists and would be happy to share insight into what we call the new normal in the field of education and higher studies.
Thank you. Moving to our university representatives.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rashad Howes, Director of International Admissions at Missouri Western State University. Pleasure to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Lorenz from Minnesota State University, Mankato, and I work as the International Recruitment and Retention Specialist there. So looking forward to this session.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Brannigan. I'm the Associate Director of International Admissions for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, our Daytona Beach campus, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you. As you know, we are facing unprecedented challenges of COVID-19, which go beyond the normal existing challenges of current political climate, the existing competition of the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia, the trade war between China and the US, and the current situation in America of protests and racial issues, and so many more. In today's new normal, we are sitting at our homes, of course, working, instead of traveling around the world, meeting, advising international students and their families through college fairs and high school visits. We have gotten heavily involved in virtual events, not knowing how effective this would be in the long term. We are showing I-20s via emails, not knowing when the US embassies will resume visa routines. High school counselors are now advising students from home through phone calls, Zoom, WhatsApp calls, or messages, and so many other virtual platforms, despite all the unknowns. The appetite for students for online offerings will likely grow because of COVID-19, but how much would that mean is still up in the air. COVID-19 has struck our educational system like a lightning bolt and shaken it to its core. Just as the first industrial revolution created today's system of education, we can expect a different kind of educational model to emerge from COVID-19. To be honest with you, what we get from this is that COVID-19 is driving a long overdue revolution. The purpose of today's webinar, as you can see in the screen, is to go over all of these challenges and highlight and share any new practices and insight that have been adopted by US universities, admission offices, high school, college counselors, and of course, Education USA offices all around the world as a result of the current challenging times. To whoever is watching this session today, of course, please note that our session has its own dedicated forum post in the virtual conference platform. We will be monitoring this forum post as you will have the opportunity to ask questions about this session and converse with us and our panelists directly. Our questions from today have been collected through a number of surveys and research that we have done that resulted in putting together and generate all these questions that we're going to bring to the table and discuss in today's session. Going back to our panelists, I'm going to exit out of this of our PowerPoint. Great. Going back to our panelists now, and to start with our first question. Karen, Sonia, Dr. Sonia, of course, Phil, Liz, Rashad, and Bobby. This is exactly going to be the order we're going to follow. How did your institutions handle the critical situation caused by COVID? And what is the new normal looking like now in performing your job as a high school counselor, Education USA representative, or a university representative? Karen?
Well, I think we all are going to look back at this time as with major events around the world, and we can say, do you remember where you were when COVID happened? And I was in Washington, D.C. with our global network for our annual meeting. And as COVID started to affect Asia, we definitely thought it was an Asia issue. And I looked to my other REACs going, oh, wow, we're going to have to cancel our Education USA tour. And now we know it's worldwide we are affected. And with that being a global network, our whole network has changed in the way we communicate, in the way we're reaching students, as well as the systems that we have in place and the systems that we've built up. I really do believe that it has allowed us the opportunity to take a step back and to really evaluate the tools that we're using to reach both students and our higher ed community, and to expand on what is there and to put new things in place. I think never more than before, we need our Education USA advisors. They are the ones on the ground. They are the ones that understand what's happening. They understand what's happening in the schools and society, what's opening up, what's closing, what's the reality. And so we are doing more reporting now than we ever have. It can be a little daunting at times, but we are really keeping tabs and trying to relay that information to the U.S. University and keeping connected with our high school networks as well. Things that have changed are training institute that we usually do in person. We were supposed to be in Portland, Oregon, and Washington, D.C. is now virtual. And our Education USA forum that was supposed to happen the end of this month is now going to be October 21st to 23rd, maybe in Washington, D.C. Registration opened up this week, but we're monitoring. So we've never had USA advisors before. We're looking at systems, and we're living in this new norm.
Absolutely. How about you, Sonia?
So coming from the school background, like we got a news one Friday that, Monday onwards gets to be just working right from your laptops. And at that point, I'm sure the students or the faculty or we had not thought that it would be changing the life so much that, your working hours just seem to be extending. Of course, it's a new normal for us, and we've adapted pretty well to it because I would say that for my school specifically, there was a lot of support that we got. There was a lot of support in trying and testing out different tools, but also at the same time, when I'm interacting with students more from the point of view of counseling and looking at universities tomorrow, where they want to go, there's a lot of panic among students. The panic is not about the panic is not about that will universities be able to deliver what they have to deliver, but the panic is more about what about the unique university experience that we want to do. So the new normal is definitely keeping us tall when it's coming about delivering academic forefront, being there, empathetic all the time for them. But at the same time, there are a lot of questions that have arisen in the mind of students, parents. And I think the questions are more related to the fact that what happens to the unique university experience, which is more important for a lot of Indian students who go to a university. Because when I talk about university deliverability for universities back in India, some of them are equally good, but we are looking at more of an experiential knowledge system, which sometimes gets little minimalized when we are looking at an online platform. There are a lot of questions. Yusuf, like, we call it the new normal, but I think it's going to take time because being what we are at the age where we are, but of course, a 17, 18-year-old have a lot of questions that, what happens to my international community? How well I be a part of it? So the schools have adapted well, but there are a lot of questions which still, I would say, are a bit unanswered.
Absolutely, a lot of questions that are still unanswered, and we're going to go through all of that in our session. So Phil, you are muted.
Very similar to Sonia's situation. At first we were very unsure about the global scale about this COVID-19 pandemic, so we weren't sure what to expect. And then we were actually off on spring break, and then we shut down all the schools, campuses at the beginning of March. So that was something that was happening throughout all of Abu Dhabi and the UAE. So Karen would be familiar with the same situation as well. But it was kind of it was being able to get communication about what was going on and what we were able to do was challenging, because we would need to find out from our governing authority that's in charge of the Ministry of Education, also the Ministry of Health, to find out and get guidelines on them, who's allowed on campus in terms of staff. So, it was very unexpected for everybody, all the students and families, obviously. But I think our school was able to demonstrate some really good agility in being able to provide services for our students, and just in the form of online learning, remote learning. And it's good that the positive thing about this becoming such a worldwide spread issue is that that there became this tremendous amount of resources for us to kind of model or follow best practice that was modeled by other schools, especially in Asia. I think John Liu was one of the first guys who was talking about his experience, and we were able to kind of follow that, see what worked and what didn't work. So that was really helpful, and there were several others who were able to share that best practice. So we were kind of fortunate in that regard. There's always a little bit of uncertainty in terms of what's coming around the corner and what's next, but it has been fortunate in terms of universities and other institutions being able to communicate and get their be proactive in terms of messaging that we've been able to provide a school counselor so we can relay that to our students and families.
Absolutely. So moving to the university part. So Liz, Rashad, and Bobby. So what is the new normal looking like to you?
Yeah, from our campus at Minnesota State Mankato, I think, and I'm sure all of us can answer in a similar way, it's really shown us what we're capable of. I think when you're put in a situation where you either adapt or you don't move forward, it shows how you can come together as a university community to find ways to support each other, to continue supporting students in what is truly essential to education, not just for international students, but students across the university campus. I think as part of the American education experience, universities and colleges in the US are so unique because we have not just academic programming, but we have so many extracurricular activities from student clubs and organizations and athletics and all the things that make the American education system a unique and holistic experience and experiential learning. And so taking away those, I guess, unique aspects that make up American education that we always consider to be essential, it's helped us focus in what supports students and how do we retain students when we're not able to continue with those programs. So kind of like what Dr. Sonia was saying too, taking away that experiential education option, what does that look like as our new normal going forward? And I don't think any of us on our campuses have fully adapted to what that new normal and what the future of education will look like, but we're doing the trial and error. We're moving things to technology to continue to support students, to create community. And so on our campus, that's been a focus for us. We've tried to develop online learning platforms, not just for students academically, but also to create community for our domestic students, for our international students, to support them in their mental health with different counseling opportunities. And so it's been that unique technology hurdle and seeing what the boundaries of technology allow us to do to continue to support students on our campus.
Yeah, it's everything that you're saying, Liz, is like completely correct. I mean, we've kind of been here with each other, to kind of figure out and like just do it like a big process of evaluation. And I think that's been one of the biggest things that's come out of this is really just been like, where are our deficiencies? How can we, if we can't, be there in person, to be able to build community, like you were saying, or be able to have connections with students and things like that. Like where do those deficiencies lie? How can we make up the different processes that we've been doing in person in a virtual manner? So we've definitely had our share of our webinars as we sit here on one right now. So it's been just one of those things, just to be able to figure out exactly, how we can make things up. So, Karen, you were talking about like where we were in this whole situation. I'm sure all of us kind of like have that same thing. I was in New York and on my way to Europe, and done deal. NBA's canceled. Everything else is too. So it's just been one thing after another, obviously. But for Missouri Western, it has definitely been a challenge. We are completely new to international education and as well as the recruiting part. So that's actually been a pretty significant challenge for us to overcome as well, just because of the fact that we've, like everyone else, we've sunk a bunch of dollars into, investment and travel and things like that. And then we also have to figure out, now that that's done, what does it look like? And so I don't think that, any of us have any specific, golden ticket solution, whatever it is. So I kind of feel like we're just here with each other, helping each other get through this current situation. So.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same for us. I echo a lot of what everybody's already said. For Embry-Riddle, I think one thing that we have that's going for us is that we've already had, an online presence. So our, world ranked online bachelor degrees. So we have, the availability and the technology kind of already there to be able to kind of migrate a lot of our students that are not able to come to the United States into still being able to reach their education. That's, somehow. I think a big thing is, we're, as a small campus, we're able to implement a lot of the safety measures, thinking about the safety and the health of our students, faculty, staff. That's a really big thing, making sure that we have enough communication going out. In terms of the new normal, yeah, I mean, same thing, a lot of virtual fairs. I'm glad that a lot more of them are popping up, different types of platforms, different types of areas around the globe. So just making sure that we stay, I guess, as innovative as possible. And as Liz said, making sure that we adapt. Otherwise, we're going to kind of fall flat on our faces and make sure that we're not successful. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. Again, as Liz said, what we can come up with, how we can push the limits, how we can still reach out to our students and make sure that they're successful, as well as our institutions are successful. So.
Absolutely. And again, another question, which will be actually exactly directed to all of you here. We know that we have these challenges that are facing our world right now, and we know that the international education is in more critical situation than ever. There's a lot of unknown, of course, but what do you think, if I ask you, like, what would be the challenges that more challenges could come in the coming weeks or months? What would you say, Karen?
Yeah, I think we're really concerned about the quality of education that students are able to receive around the world. I mean, I think that definitely we all know that private schools have often fared better because they had usually some type of learning management platform in place already, but not necessarily as some of their other schools, in other places around the world. I think public education has really suffered. And some countries like Kuwait, they just decided to put school on hold and said, seniors, you can come back in August. And so everybody has been not even online, academically, for the past few months and won't be until August. I've seen things like in Pakistan where they're doing lessons on television. And then you have other places where there just is no Wi-Fi internet, or the students don't have access to a computer or a smartphone or a tablet. So that's a concern. We're concerned about the government scholarship students that many of our universities depend on. And many of them did return back to their home countries. Will they go back to continue their studies? Will these programs continue to exist, especially as the economies weaken? In places like India, we're concerned about OPT and CPT, as well as the ability to get an H-1 visa. We know that many of our Indian graduate students specifically go on to work in the United States. And so how will that fare in their choices? And I think too, just safety. We had the whole hashtag "You Are Welcome" here, and I think there could be another version of that for many different other reasons. But also in bringing international students to the United States, given that the numbers are going up, what is our responsibility to make sure that we are keeping them safe, that they will have health insurance, so that they will be okay once they arrive? And if they do get sick, will they have the care that they need, or will they be able to afford it? And then, of course, everybody is talking about visas and flights. Can you get a visa? Are consular sections open? If you can get a visa, are you even going to be able to get on a flight? What do you do with quarantining? So we do work very closely, Education USA, with our consular colleagues. We're in touch with them. This is the time that we're doing pre-departure orientations. We're looping in our consular sections. They're doing videos. Our ambassador from Kuwait just went on recently and did a Zoom question and answer about visas specifically. So please continue to check back with us. Check the websites because it will vary from country to country. I talked to David Turner, who is a high school counselor at Dwight School here in Dubai, and he mentioned, virtual engagements are mentally fatiguing at times. I think we have all been there, and it just is very, very difficult. And students are craving human interaction, and so we have to look at ways of how we continue to be a community, but do it, under these circumstances.
Thanks, Karen, for sharing, your inputs. And that's exactly what I would take on and say that some of the future challenges, which I see as a school counselor who has, I would say 92% of my students moving to US to complete their undergraduate studies and then maybe, just take on their graduate course over there. As one of the major challenges, I would say I see a lot of challenges in front of me. One of the major challenges would be that getting the entire feel of being in the university. Of course, when it comes to folks, I think COVID-19 has also shown me a better side of being humans, where everybody got united, be it on the other side. I think even when we have all of us talking, we are from different universities, different parts of the world. We're not here as competitors, but we are here to collaborate. And that's what's happening. We are collaborating to help our students. But one of the biggest challenges, which I still see, even though there is a lot of collaboration happening and everything going well around, is the fact that what would happen to the courses which need a laboratory? Like I have a student who tells me that how do you expect me to be completing a course in art and design when I really need a lab? And I'm fixed. Actually, I'm in a fix because I really don't know what to tell her. That should she go in and take up, hybrid classes where she does some months here and a few months there. So she's asking me, okay, even if I start, do you have a surety when I'm going to get back? So, that's a future challenge, because I see a lot of kids who want to leave India because they want that typical experiential knowledge. And that's what the universities in US were all about. Secondly, another big concern that came from parents was the way some of the universities in US asked, or maybe if I may say, forced the students to leave the dorms and leave the dorms, right? Indian parents are worried that, we are so many kilometers away. I do understand we have so much of it happening that lives matter, but we also have to consider that there is a huge distance between the two countries. What happens to those countries? And as Karen rightly put, I think the universities and parents definitely need to come up with a plan. And it's not just about US, it's also about the country that the kid is leaving to need to come out with a better health security measures, better insurances for the families of the affected. And I'm talking about a broad parameter of things which my parents have given me, in the sense, when I say my parents, I mean the students at my school, their parents. Education is important, but for some of us, surviving the COVID till the time the child was not back home was more of a concern at the moment. Also, looking at it, even if we go ahead with the blended classes, one of the big questions would be that even if they're pre-recorded sessions, we are missing on the human touch. And I think, as I've always said, human touch is very important to education industry. I think two industries which cannot exist are, I think, the medicine and education, where you definitely need a human touch, because sometimes when you're dealing in a virtual classroom, you're not able to gauge the emotional aspect of a child, which is important. And that emotional bonding, like if I go back, some of my professors are my good friends till date, because they were able to understand who I am and who I was as a student of undergraduate, and they helped me to be nurtured the right way. So that's a challenge I see. Even till date, if I need an advice, I go back to my professors. So it's not that we're not doing our best. We all are doing our best, and we are working in a great collaborative space. And it's nice that we've come together on humanitarian grounds to support each other. But still, I think on a personal level, I think we're missing the human touch, which is so very essential. So that's it for me. And
that's actually true. We do agree. We totally agree with you. From university, like what we say to students is, it is. We did not expect this, but focus on the coming semesters. This is only one semester. There will be 7 other semesters that you will be able, hopefully, to take. And I will choose here just one example from the university side. Rashad, what are the future challenges? What do you think?
Well, I think if I can pull out my crystal ball here, there's so many different things. I think the overarching term for me is just settling into what we keep talking about, like the new normal per se, but I really don't even think that we really have a true understanding exactly what that means, because I think it's going to change from from moment to moment, and I think we've definitely seen that kind of unfold. But just changes to like how we do business, how we're looking at evaluating students' transcripts? And is it going to be the same type of evaluation system without having the test scores? I know some of us have talked about that, and that's definitely a huge issue. As far as I think, really just shaking hands, like what's going to happen? You know what I mean? It's such an important thing. Like, is that something that we'll continue to do? But I think, as well, I think America has been on trial here in a sense, in a lot of different ways, and it's really tough, I think, just as far as dealing with like our political issues, dealing with, the division, and then how that is going to be digested by the international community. I think that there's always going to be opportunity and advancement, but as things continue, how is the world going to potentially retract from the U.S.? That's definitely a huge thing that I personally have been thinking about. But I know that our students and our international communities will think about as well. So I can definitely go on as far as that's concerned. But also just taking under consideration like your career, your own career advancement, and us as professionals, and what kind of opportunities we're going to have since we have like lost like this personal touch. What are we going to do to get it back once all of this is over? So it's there's a lot of things that obviously we're taking a look at just in constraints of the challenges that we have. So
Absolutely. Phil and Dr. Sonia are both great example of dedicated high school counselors who work so hard with their sophomore, junior, and senior students, preparing them for their SATs, any tests, APs, and throughout the application process. So, Phil, how do you rate like the response of U.S. universities given to the situation of COVID, when like they had, for example, to move to online, or to have students go back home, or just do their studies from? How do you rate? How do you see that?
Yeah, there's a lot of universities that were putting out information very proactively on counselor newsletters, or just through the representatives that we had communications from in the past. And so that was really helpful, because being able to have that information firsthand from the university representatives, we're able to share that with our students and families, and that certainly gives them what little reassurance we can in uncertain times. Obviously, there's limitations, because everybody's trying to figure out what's going to happen, right, and how this is going to play out. I think the last thing anybody wants to do, whether you're an institution or high school, is get the wrong information or jump the gun to a family. But there is like a level of transparency that's appreciated, and I think when you're working with our students and families directly, you'll find that just being in the know gives them a lot of reassurance, and just by letting them know what we know. So that was certainly helpful. There were some universities where I think their communication could have been better. So for one of my seniors, the university committed to, he found out that just kind of recently that they weren't issuing his I-20, and I had no idea about that. So I found out through him. So I think in the response like that, it would be helpful to know from the school counselor side, from that university, if something like that is happening. But we essentially set up a couple of meetings, one for our class in 2020, and sort of what the fall is going to look like, and also a lot of people are worried in the class of 2021, right? But especially if you're taking IB classes or A levels, this is a 2-year course, so you're missing out on that face-to-face instruction. That's going to affect your results for next year, and obviously the testing that most people start taking during that spring and junior year, they're obviously impacted. So being able to find out from the universities even now, like more and more universities seeing that message about them going test optional and what the fall is going to look like for that, and how they're taking this coming admission cycle, how that's going to be played out. It's certainly helpful.
Absolutely. Karen, Phil just touched on a very important point here, which is like the I-20, which brings me to the visa situation. Is there anything you would like to share about the visa situation right now for international students?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that our Education USA advisors are working closely with our consular colleagues, and this is the time that we do pre-departure orientations, and we loop in those colleagues for those presentations. So those are starting to roll out this month, and will go from this month through August. So check if you're concerned about a certain country, please check with the Education USA advisor and steer students to those pre-departure orientations. We list them all on the Education USA website as events. And, we really want to make sure that the students are a part of those. But we have, it's going to be different for every country. And it's going to depend not necessarily even, for example, what's happening in the country, but what that embassy or consulate decides as well. So the state.gov website is really the place to go. I wish I had like more confirmation. I could say this is the answer. The reality is that students will be getting priority when it comes to visas. As I mentioned, the Kuwaiti ambassador mentioned that is very high on the list, but we do want to make sure that we're being safe in asking them to come in for interviews, as well as making sure, it's the right time to open things up. So please keep in touch with us, and we really are doing our best to get the information out there. I do know that Asia is starting to open up. It's probably of all the places around the world, that is the place where we are seeing a bit more movement. And so that's a good thing.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to add,
yeah,
if I could add, Karen, I've been in touch with her a few times, and the Education USA office has been a great resource for our non-U.S. passport holder students and families. So that was certainly helpful in guiding them through that process, and they provided us some really good resources as well.
Absolutely, we cannot go without like acknowledging the efforts of Education USA, helping international students, even those that are actually stranded here in the United States and trying to get back home, spend the summer with their families, of course. Another question: what new practices have you adopted in doing your job? This question is for you, Bobby. So now you recruit. We know you recruit a lot. You a road warrior. You go around a lot of college fairs around the world and high school visits. So what is the new normal in doing that in the future? Or what is your plan?
Excuse me. So for the fall semester, and even I guess through the summer now, we're just trying to reach as many students and as many counselors, parents, as we can. So what we did was a virtual accepted student reception, I guess, online, which is pretty cool. So we had our president, Dr. Butler, speak to them, our assistant provost, Dr. Aaron Clevenger. So that's just giving a little bit more of a sense for our incoming students. That way, they know that we're here for them. We want to welcome them this fall. But in terms of recruiting and being able to reach out, we try to reach out to as many counselors as we can, collaborating with, other institutions for, these virtual events. So in terms of like an on-ground virtual tour, or on-ground tour, we do a virtual tour. So just making sure that you're able to work with other, peers, making sure that you do have those contacts as well. So, looking back through your Rolodex, you could say, to try to figure out, what contacts you have, who can you reach out to, who is actually able to host these different types of virtual events. So a lot of the companies that usually have the on-ground tours are doing virtual events. So just kind of shopping around. We're looking at a few different tour companies and organizations. A lot that we've already been on have great platforms. They've had great attendance. We've been able to reach a lot of people, both applicants and parents, but just even those one-on-ones with those high school counselors, means so much. So I think that that's something that everybody just trying to do, just trying to figure out the best way possible to be able to do it.
Yeah, Dr. Sonia, Bobby just gave one example of what U.S. University is adopting as practices when reaching out to international students who want to come to the U.S. What do you think of these new practices? Is there anything you would like to add as a tip or as an advice? Do you think these are like could be effective for your students?
So what Bobby said was exactly what's happening around that. Like he said, he's been shopping around and picking up on organizations which do on-ground tours, and all these. We've of course not shared the database of the students with organizations to do with, and also the university platforms like Say Alpha, which you are helping us to have. My school has a tie-up with Say Alpha, and we've already done USA every now, and of course a lot of credit are most
Yeah,
been ever
absolutely.
stretching back of the arm. All universities have been really good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Karen, would you like to add anything from an Education USA standpoint here? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it has been amazing, the response of U.S. universities' engagement. I'll give the example of Pakistan. We put a call out to U.S. universities asking them if they wanted to engage in webinars. And we had over 100 U.S. institutions contact our offices in Pakistan. And with that, 60% of them were new to Education USA Pakistan. It has been so great to see universities that we have not engaged with before do armchair recruiting. So showing up is huge. And then doing group presentations. I mean, we're doing things across countries, across regions that we've never done before. So partnering up so that you don't feel like you have to do a webinar for every center, but getting together with your colleagues. Or, you know, we did a webinar for Ramadan and we had Morocco and Pakistan in the same room. It was awesome. So that's really great. When it comes to social media, package your social media. If you want us to push something out, put it together with us. Put the quote together, put the image. It's so much easier than us trying to go to Canva and make it ourselves. So just be accessible. But thank you. We really love seeing you all. Keep coming back.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Of course. Yeah, we thought like, me, myself, and Rashad and Liz and Bobby, we thought like, just let's come up with the topic and just like reaching out to these number of universities, I mean, schools or Education USA, and just like to all of us do it instead of like creating that Zoom fatigue and all of that. So, speaking of Zoom fatigue, and this question is for you again, Karen. I would like to hear. So there are many question marks here regarding the online format of college fairs and school visits, adding more screen time on top of online classes and lectures, and creating Zoom fatigue, of course. Have you seen students getting tired of this yet? Or do you think, what is your say? And I would love to also open this question to Phil, if you would like to add anything.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough to know how to balance, you know, how much screen time consumption that one can take. And I think not only that, there aren't markers in the days, weeks, and months to help us just structure life, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, even for myself, and I know the students are going through this as well, it's hard sometimes to go, what did I do last week? You know, everything just kind of is one big blob. So it is a very difficult time. One of the things that we did in the UAE is we did a 3-part series with a clinical psychologist, an American here, and we did a webinar for high school counselors, and we did one for students, and the next one's for students and parents. But you know, this is a unique time, and we all need help in navigating the challenges, you know, that exist. And so that was kind of our way to reach out to the community and go, you know, you're not alone, and a lot of us are going through these similar things, and that we need to pull together.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those challenges, Zoom fatigue. I think that there's been some definitely this allowed us to take a step back and look at what we're using in our toolbox and how we could maybe be more efficient and reaching a vaster audience, in terms of parents coming in for meetings and whatnot, and even participation in workshops and webinars has been great. And having like partnering with universities, it's you can't replace that face-to-face interaction, like Sonia was saying, and even there's a number of challenges that happen. When you're just with so much screen time with our students, it's challenging. And I think that you need to be able to have that opportunity just to connect one-on-one. So I think there's some parameters around that, even when we're meeting with our students as high school counselors. But I think in terms of just my social work background, concerns for the mental health of our students and our families, and how this is affecting them during this time of remote learning, where there's a lot of innovative practices that are being used. I think that opens up this whole new world that could be that could really change our practice in the future. But then there's also, you definitely feel that you're missing out on just this fundamental element of relationships, and I think all of us could identify with this. We're doing this internationally, CAC, virtually, and we'll be able to attend all the sessions. And if you miss one, you can look it up, and you can watch it online. But we're missing those times in between where, you're able to just develop relationships with some of the best friends that we found over the years, and it's not going to be quite the same. I know we're all looking forward to those days again.
I gotta say, we're missing the dodgeball game.
We are.
I had just kind of a thought like that. It's just going to be really interesting once we get back to, I guess, whatever was going to be normal life. I think one of the good things that might come out of this is just the fact that maybe in the future, or I would just say maybe in the past, if you reached out to maybe a school counselor via Zoom or you invited them, they would just say, well, I don't have the time. or maybe I wouldn't want to connect with someone via Zoom or whatever it is. And I think coming out of this, all of us are going to have that skill set kind of like already built in. So I'm just hoping that's going to necessarily translate into another dimension of being able to connect with people. So that would be able to kind of reach into that after all of this is done. So I think that is me just being obviously enthusiastic about the whole situation. But I will definitely say in closing, that first conference is going to be legendary. Once we come back, it's just going to be legendary. I'll just stop and say that.
Yeah, we're all waiting for the legendary comeback, definitely. Liz, I was talking to with Sonia a few days ago, and she actually said this very good question. She raised this very good question, which pretty much like every high school counselor's question right now. A lot of colleges are now moving away from SAT. There are a lot of colleges now are going test optional and becoming. So what does that mean exactly? So her question was like, how many? There are so many different curriculums. Which parameter would you, for example, like to use as a substitute to this important component? For example, if you want to go to computer science, the important component there was like I have to have this this kind of score in the SAT, 700 math, for example. I have to have a minimum of 92 GPA in order to get, and I have to have taken like math and physics, for example. So what is replacing that component here?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think it addresses an underlying issue that a lot of students and high school counselors and universities have had even before COVID-19 of, does an SAT score accurately measure a student's aptitude and academic admissibility, or should it be based on their overall high school grades and test results from their high school completion and final exams? And I know that's an ongoing question as well for domestic admissions too. Is an SAT an accurate measurement of that student's success at a university level? And so I think COVID-19 has created an opportunity for us to look at the SAT and say, is this really essential for university admissions? So that question that's always kind of been in the murmuring and background for university admissions is now kind of being answered by a lot of universities having to move away from or becoming more test optional. I can speak from Minnesota State Mankato and our institution. We have always been a test optional institution, and so this is nothing new for us. Our admissions has been based off of a student's overall grade point average. Regardless of the curriculum that they studied in, we do the conversion for that student. And so we're in a unique position where we don't have to make that decision to become test optional. We've always had that as our admission criteria. And I think universities that traditionally require the SAT are now having to find alternative methods of what makes a student an admissible candidate. What are those minimum admission criteria? And I think that can be based on a lot of different things, but going forward from what I've heard from my colleagues, it's going to focus more on their overall high school grade point average. They're going to weigh their final GPA, their cumulative GPA or equivalent much more heavily because they don't have that component of the SAT. They'll also likely be looking more at student essays, letters of recommendation from their high school counselors, if that's something that's a requirement as well, especially when it comes to scholarship considerations, since SAT oftentimes plays a big role in merit-based scholarships. It's taking away that component as well. So I think universities are now put in that situation of looking at their minimum criteria for admissions and for scholarship consideration and kind of having to rewrite those admission policies going forward. So I don't think there's a clear answer exactly for every institution, but I know this has created a common opportunity for all universities to look at those admission standards and those policies and address what is essential for academic admissibility.
I'm sure Dr. Sonia, would you like to add anything? Does that answer your question?
This has almost echoed what I feel, and that's what I've been advising students. So thank you so much for putting it so crispier, less for everybody, that I've told the students that if you have an opportunity, go ahead and do it, because it is the most standardized form of document that the universities have. And this is just for a year. No university is saying that we're going to take it off. And I see a lot of credibility of College Board, especially with these tests over the years.
But here's the question here that I would like to actually ask about this in relation to this, and this is for Phil as well. So do you think like a lot of students now will think that it's easy now to apply to engineering?
I think I have a lot of students that are worried about, you know, they were banking on that portion of testing to be able to prove that they could play, you know, so they were banking on that testing to strengthen their application. And now they're worried about that. They're worried about summer opportunities where they might have had an internship planned, or activities where they could show their engagement beyond the classroom, you know, that they don't have that. So they're wondering about what are going to be how do they make themselves stand out, especially for such a competitive major like engineering, when I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other applicants with grades that are 4.0s or nearly perfectly there. And so hopefully, you know, there are those opportunities, but I think you do have a lot of students and families that are nervous about this, you know, and feeling that if they have a strong student or have a student that's a strong test taker, and now that the practice is test optional and they didn't have that, are they going to be disadvantaged? And, you know, we're trying to give them the reassurance that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the universities are looking for the best people in that school, and that, you know, we're trying to make this as human as possible, and to let them know this isn't like trying to figure out a rigged game. So I think having this communication from admission counselors is certainly helpful in that conversation. So we could try to bring down that hysteria level, you know, and so that's helpful to hear all of you in this communication.
If I could just add something, for me, I see that the academic profile is a big question at the moment, because we have students who come to US, not just from India, but from all across the globe. What is the standardized format you have for everybody? I do understand that the university reps around the world are trying their best to understand different curriculums. But till the time SAT was there or ACT was being used widely, the kids were able to help themselves to be pegged on a standardized format, which would be done away for a year. And that would definitely make the application much more fluid rather than having a structure, which makes comparison of an apple to an apple easier, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's very important. We only have like a little bit over 5 minutes left for our panel, but I do not want to miss this question. So Phil and Dr. Sonia again. So what new things that you come up with as a counselor in actually reaching out to, would like to hear, like what are the new platforms you're using, or the new practices that you have adopted in advising your students?
So our school is using Google Meet a lot. It was challenging to try to figure something out, because if you're in the UAE, a lot of like Skype is blocked, and certain you need a VPN to use certain platforms. So our tech team has been amazing, and they've been able to set up Google Classrooms with all the students. So that's been our main way of being able to reach out to them and providing, you know, usually this time of year, the second semester, junior year, is a really heavy time for meetings and workshops that we have with our students. And I think even on our level, in my role at our school, it's a comprehensive role, meaning that, you know, we're doing college and career and social and emotional as well. So it's just really important that we have that time with students. You know, we need to be able to connect with them. So it has increased that accessibility, and being able to meet individually through Google Meet or whatever online platform you have, meeting in small groups, meeting in larger groups. So we're able to meet with like our grade level caseload. And I think that was especially important when you're looking at just even the recent events that have been going on in terms of race relations in the U.S., you know, and obviously before that, the pandemic. But you know, that's been certainly that technology has been useful in trying to be able to move forward in the best direction and with best practice in mind. So that's been essential for it.
So that would be a lot in addition to what even I'm doing back at my school. But I would say that technology has been really helpful, but it's also overwhelming at the time. When you have 6 webinars going on, students find it very, very difficult. So one of the things that I've done back in my school, and we have a team, and I come from a school that believes in inclusive education, and our USP is inclusive education. So, you know, we have as much of celebration of a chef as we would have of an engineer, right? So what I've started doing is that on every Saturday, I kind of compile a list of all the webinars that are going to happen over the week. Okay, and it would be surprising that sometimes there's a week which has more than 50 webinars, and I pass it on a WhatsApp to students, because I feel they are more on WhatsApps, and we're also, you know, trying to have, I mean, I have one meeting every day with a rising senior and one meeting for a student of grade 12, just to, you know, understand if there are any changes, if they're looking at more universities, and also we are opening up more and more destinations to them. So definitely technology is very, very helpful, but getting it more organized is what my target has been at the moment. And of course, no biases, but my love for USIF is very, very pronounced. And I tell them, whatever happens, you cannot miss a session by them, because that makes a lot more sense to us, because they cover the entire gamut without any biases and prejudices.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing all these insightful, very good tips, advices, and updates. Thank you very much. I just want to give one, if I give you like 10 seconds to each one to just give a final message, please, an update or any question that you want to leave open. Please go ahead, Karen.
Yes, keep engaged with us, and remember the students that we are reaching for the very first time, who are those students at maybe those public schools who have heard of Education USA and who have thought about studying in the US for the very first time. We are reaching these students, and we need to keep in touch with you so we can help be that bridge, and when things do open up, that they consider the United States for study.
So from me, I would say, please, 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 the university reps, keep in touch with us. I'm sure the COVID-19 is going to end, but the way you have just handholded us students, just keep that information coming. I love to see my inbox filled with every little information. It just helps. So please be in touch.
Yeah, I'll second that. The communication has been really good from the universities for the most part, like I said. And a couple of weeks ago, we did a webinar, and I think it was Marist and Gettysburg, FIU, that was, and Baylor, like, so they were able to reach a lot of their students. And then, just a continuation after that, where students were able to follow up with one-on-one meetings with them. So just that's super helpful. And I think it enhances that opportunity for relationship building to make this process a lot more human. So it just opening up that accessibility has been really good. And then I think, it's been a big part of it.
Well, I would definitely say to to my Education USA, to college counselors, and also my colleagues and university side, I miss you. That's all I got. Can't wait to reconnect.
I definitely second that. And I would say the same to Education USA and also to the high school counselors. Thank you for keeping us up to date whenever we reach out with questions or need information about what's going on at your particular school or in your particular country or region. It's been really helpful for us to make decisions, fact-based decisions to our admission process throughout this time, as students have had difficulty accessing transcripts or financial records. So all of you have been a huge resource to that. And yeah, definitely miss you guys. Can't wait till we can have this in-person session.
Yeah, I would say the same. Thank you all so much. And I think that we've, definitely been able to have you as resources. When we do go back to work and to traveling, don't forget your pets, please.
Thank you, Education USA. Thank you to our panelists, Dr. Sonia and Phil, and our university representatives, Rashad, Liz, and Bobby. Thank you to the International ACAC for giving us this opportunity to sit together virtually, corona-free round table, call it whatever. So please note that our session has its own dedicated forum post in the virtual conference platform. We will be monitoring this forum post, as you will have the opportunity to ask questions about the session and converse with us and our panelists directly. Our questions from today, as I said, it does not reflect everyone's the other universities or other high schools. So please, if you have answers that are different to ours, please feel free to post them on the forum post. With that, thank you so much. We hope you stay healthy in this challenging time. And of course, we wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.